Mercifulness is, as we are told in the famous court scene in The Merchant of Venice, the quality of mercy is not strained. It falleth as a gentle dew of heaven upon the place beneath. Mercy is something that is a universal thing. Most religions have taught us that there is a mercifulness of God, and that by this mercy all of its creatures are sustained, protected, and loved, even while they make mistakes. And that this mercy will bring the atheist home just as easily and quickly as the believer. That in the light of heaven, as Akhenaton, the great Egyptian, pointed out, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. The believer is not, in all cases, better treated than the unbeliever, because in the great mystery of things, believing and unbelieving both come in the end to truth, come in the end to the tremendous redeeming power of life. And Northern Buddhism, perhaps, has most clearly pointed out that there can be nothing in the universe that is not brought to peace and salvation. That the law which seems to us so strong and so severe is really a law of infinite mercy. And in Eastern wisdom, the deity Kuan Yin or Kannon, the gracious principle of mercy, is forever pouring forth the waters of salvation. The merciful heart, the heart that is quick in sympathy and genuine, the merciful heart which is quick to forgive and forget, that holds no grudge against life, that is always responsive to the need of life, even though this need may sometimes be exploited. I think the mercifulness of man is his help. If he is exploited, if the person to whom he does a good deed perverts that deed, misuses it or deceives, or exploits the one that does this deed, still this is no concern of the merciful person. For mercy rewards itself. It is not rewarded because we are able to live in the presence of the evidence that our kindness has been recognized. Our strength lies in the inevitable instinct to be kind that rises within ourselves. And if this instinct is guided by wisdom, we may then have no false hopes as to how well we will be remembered or how deeply we will be appreciated. These things are not important. The importance from a mystical standpoint is that man shall instinctively be kind, that he will instinctively be thoughtful, and will instinctively place the good of others above his own good. This is the law of the universe. It may make things a little complicated here, but it will simplify the internal life of the person, for in his efforts to protect himself from imposition, he locks his own consciousness, therefore does himself a final ill, even while he is trying to protect himself. Then we have another verse, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." This undoubtedly is one of the most complete statements of mysticism that we know. And how shall we understand purity of heart? I think we shall understand it not merely in terms of virtue and vice, or morality or unmorality. I think we shall think of it really in terms of the simple state of goodness in our own natures. That the pure of heart is the individual actually within whose nature there is no guile. The one like the guileless fool in the story of Parsifal, or the pure knight Sir Galahad in the cycle of the Grail. It is the simple state of being good, not in a fussy little goodness that we are constantly trying to impose upon others, or make others believe that we have, but a deep, simple sincerity. That in the actual sincerity, the inner determination to do the best that we know within our means and power at any given time, in this conviction fully applied to the very utmost of our ability, we have the greatest source of strength that we possess. It is this purity of heart which will save us from the psychologist's couch. It is this purity of heart which will prevent us from being imposed upon. Now, we sometimes feel that if we are nice enough, kind enough, generous enough, and good enough, we will lose everything we have. This is a very normal and proper attitude to most people. But this is not the cause of loss. No man has lost anything because he was good. He lost because he tried to be good and he was foolish at the same time. No one has ever been defeated by his virtue. He has been defeated because actually this sense of purity, of rightness within himself was not adequate to protect him against poor judgments, against flattery, against imposture, and he was trying to substitute purity for common sense. Now, actually, if we attain a complete inner detachment from false value, we will have common sense. Because just as surely as the child heart or the child consciousness gives us this complete sincerity, so surely the complete sincerity of the maturely attained consciousness cannot be attacked by deceit. It simply cannot be deceived, because to be deceived, there must be something wrong with us. Well, there's something wrong with all of us, so we will always be deceived to some degree. But we have no right to believe that this deceit is due to the fact that we are good, or that we have been generous, or that we have been kind. The trouble has been that we have not yet been strong enough to do all that was necessary to achieve virtue. On the other hand, even though we are deceived or exploited or to a measure injured in an effort to be kind, to be good, to be true, we are still better off, because at least in our own consciousness, we are not conscience-stricken. We have done the best that we could. The other person's exploitation of it is not our immediate problem. We may regret, however, that our wisdom was not great enough to also protect that other person. But I think there is no question in the world that purity of heart is this mystical thing, and this fact that it leads to the statement that they shall see God suggests the mystical experience, suggests illumination as a result of the individual having overcome all of the self-imposed attitudes which may be regarded as impurity of heart. Also, it is pointed out here that it is the way of the heart that will lead to the sight of God, rather than perhaps the way of the mind. And I think we know what is meant by this, that consciousness literally is seated in the heart, and that therefore consciousness expresses itself more perfectly and completely through emotion than it does through thought, and that of all emotions that may lead to the experience of the immediate presence of God, the simple, pure emotion of a clear faith must be the most important. And faith can only really be complete, really full, really adequate, when the individual is no longer the victim of the inconsistencies of his own intellect or of his own conduct. So that purity simply means relaxation away from what is wrong, and to abide in the simple nature of reality itself. And those who do this shall inwardly see God. They shall be aware of the full purpose and measure of the divine plan and its operation in their own lives. Now also we have here this statement, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Now there are some who are born with the instinct to peace. There are others who seem to be born with the instinct of conflict. And today you can defend any of these attitudes. People say they have to stand up for what they believe, but that isn't what they are really doing in most cases. They do not have the full understanding of the true principle of peace. I think one of the greatest exponents, perhaps, of this concept of the tremendous power of peace was the late Mohandas Gandhi. Of all the great men of modern time, those who have become the leaders of world affairs, perhaps he has given the loftiest example of the power of man to achieve that which is necessary and right with a minimum of aggressiveness, with a constant emphasis upon non-violence and the determination to win through respect and regard and admiration, and to win by calling upon the other person to express a higher degree of conduct than he had originally intended. Certainly we know, and we have every reason from history and record to recognize the fact that those who live by the sword must perish by the sword. That the one thing that is necessary in this world today is one great victory of peace. That what we desperately need is to create a cause of peace. That in some way we must set peace in motion. Peace is not caused by war. Peace is caused by peace, by lawfulness, by the solution of problems according to the levels of consciousness which man has attained, and not solutions based upon a bestial level which he is supposed to gradually have overcome. Now it may well be that it is not easy to imagine that we are going to be able to gather a world in peace, that even such dreams as the United Nations cannot accomplish this. But we know inside of our own lives that this peace is right, that we must ultimately find that which we have earned, and that we must earn peace. One way, in a sense, that we can earn it is that each person shall become, so to say, a witness before the world of the peace in his own heart. Individually, perhaps we can earn peace for the collective. For if enough individuals practice peace in consciousness, peace becomes a law in this world. And by degrees, this better consciousness may move into the political areas. Nations will not find peace alone. Man must find it in himself and bestow it upon his own collectives, be they nations, races, or institutions. But peace must come. And the same kind of peace that is necessary to bring law and order to nations must also bring law and order to the discords within the consciousness of persons. If we were at peace, we would be a healthy people. If we were at peace, we would know how to cooperate. If we were at peace, we would be courteous and thoughtful. We would not impose upon others, nor would we exploit others for the advancement of our own small estates. If we were a peaceful people, we would live in comradeship and fraternity with our neighbors, our families, and our friends. Now, the larger things we cannot do, but we can recognize that the way to a serene life is away from conflict. a way towards the conscious experience and the continuing experience of a gracious peacefulness in our own spirits. Wherever in daily living we are tempted, therefore, to depart from peace into a destructive attitude, into complaint, into criticism or condemnation, into an aggressive action of revenge or retaliation. When these impulses rise in us, let us remember that these are the impulses that has given the world 8,000 wars. Therefore, we cannot expect nations to live at peace if individuals claiming a reasonable degree of self-enlightenment are themselves not able to live together in peace. Peace begins with the individual. It begins in the heart of the mystic. It begins with the acceptance of the rightness of life and the realization that if we accept life as a way of learning, we can accept it peacefully. But if we accept it merely as a challenge to the gratification of our own purposes, we will be at war forever. So it is in the consciousness and the power of the mystic that peace must be found. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Perhaps this is something we also must realize, namely that as we do try to live better, we do have certain debts which somehow come up and hit us in the face. The individual does not become good by being weak. And that is one of the things that has been pointed out in connection with the Sermon on the Mount. Many people feel that it is negative, that if you do all these things, you're just going to be a nobody. That if you do all these things, no one is going to respect you, everyone is going to walk on you, and you will be a total failure. Many sincerely believe this. But as most of the Near Eastern mystics, particularly the Sufis, have pointed out, the way of righteousness is not negative. It demands more of real strength than any aggressiveness that you can possibly hope to build upon. The individual who is weak can never attain this very thing. They can never attain peace of soul. It is one of the great treasures of life. It is one of the ultimate goals of human endeavor, and it will never be gained by weakness. It requires much more of strength to be gentle than to be cruel. It takes much more of integrity to be fair in all things than it does to flare up with the selfishness and self-centeredness which dominates so many persons. The quiet, constant control of self is not only a difficult path, but it is one in which we will be to a measure, as the disciples were, and I think this is particularly aimed at them, that they will be persecuted for the sake of righteousness. They will not only be persecuted perhaps by other people, ridiculed, scoffed at, injured, but we can look back upon the lives of those who have given us the most and realize how shabbily they were treated. Yet if we ask someone like Socrates if he was shabbily treated, he would probably say no. If we ask these people whether or not they regretted the way in which they had lived and the consequent persecution that came upon themselves, they would most certainly say no. They do not regret. Because while to the person who is still living in a partial consciousness, the injuries that come to those who try to live better seem to be a horrible punishment. When the person who does live better has the advantage of the greater consciousness in himself, he is beyond and above any injury that can be done to him. The consciousness of union with truth the eternal sense of being one with good and with God is so much more a compensation that no injury committed against such a person by Caesar or his domains could injure that person in any way in comparison to any relapse in his own conduct. No one on earth can injure us to the degree that our own temper can. No one on earth can persecute us as much as our own desires can persecute us. And it is far better, as all mystics have pointed well and clearly, that man shall be right with God than that man shall be acceptable to man. If man is truly right with God, however, he will be acceptable to all honorable persons, and he will ultimately be able to contribute to the gradual reclamation of those less honorable. And if we do remain true to our principles, you will be surprised to see the inevitable social benefits that will result. We have several great social problems today that exist only because there is no one willing to be true to himself. I'm thinking a little bit of the complaints that are rising relating to juvenile delinquency, complaints relating to the rate of divorce. 50% of marriages break up in the state of California. These things represent problems. Our discontent with entertainment, the constant complaint against radio and television, against literature and plays. This complaint is meaningless. But if these persons who complained would simply refrain from cooperating with that which they regard to be wrong, they would get what they regard to be right. And in a very short time, those few who feel themselves persecuted for the sake of righteousness would realize that by standing together, righteousness is achieved, and that then they will all be much happier than they were before. There is nothing in truth that finally hurts. It is only the fact that we will not live what we know to be true that creates the conflict which becomes hurtful. Therefore, we can then end with the final beatitude which said, "Blessed are ye, when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you." I think that this is the summary of the entire problem. That if the individual is persecuted because of his principles, and if his principles are right and reasonable, if he is persecuted because he lives better, not differently. Many people are persecuted for eccentricity. This is not what we refer to. We refer to, however, to the fact that the individual may seem to suffer or seem to lose because he is better. But for such a person, for what small damage there may seem to come to him, there is an infinite enlargement of value. And there is always the question as to whether it is better to be acceptable to men or acceptable to God. And those who live well will be acceptable to all good men. And no one can please anyone, no one can please everyone anyway. So it is better that we please the good by the performance of the good in ourselves. In any generation, this may lead to certain conflict with persons of other attitudes. But it is not necessary that this conflict be unreasonable. It is not necessary that we be aggressive. It is simply necessary that we stay with the principles we believe and live them. If we do this, we will ultimately bring the world to these principles. And if these principles are right, we will all be right together. Whereas if we have no principles and refrain entirely from any solid conviction, our world drifts into an infinite chaos from which it is difficult for a recovery to be achieved. We are now living in the evidence of compromise. We are living in a world that has not stood strong for the principles it believes. We have today 7 great living religions in the world. These religions affect the lives of 5/6 of all living persons. These religions are for the most part founded in a solid morality, in basic ethical principles that would be solutional if we could make them work. And the Sermon on the Mount tells us very simply that they must work, or else man must continue in the disaster which he has created for himself. They must work because man, in order to gain the spiritual end for which he was created, must pass through certain testing, must prove his own dedication to value. The true wisdom which he seeks is the most priceless treasure in all the world. It is indeed the pearl of great price, and for it he must pay the great price. And the great price is not in dollars, nor is it in terms of power or authority. This great price is absolutely democratic. It is not nearer to those more privileged or further from those less privileged. The great price is sincerity, and this cuts through the rich and the poor, the great and the lowly. The price of inner peace and of health and of world peace, the price of understanding between men, of tolerance and generosity and friendship and faith. This price is sincerity and the courage to live it. And if we do that, we will come collectively and individually to this good end which we desire. If we do not achieve it, then we must face its consequences in our own conduct. But regardless of what happens, regardless of the world in which we live, the good person, the person essentially right, the sincere person, has the better time. This may not be true in terms of the opinion of a less sincere person, but this less sincere person has an opinion that is worthless, because it cannot judge that which it has not experienced. So those who feel that there is a great adversity in the Beatitudes are those who have not experienced this need. Those, however, who have clung most closely would be perfectly willing at any moment to exchange all the wisdom of the mortal world for this other wisdom that comes in the spirit of those who keep the faith and who keep the law and come to internal integration. Well, our time is up, so I guess that's all we can do with the subject this morning. Now may I take this opportunity of wishing all of you a very, very happy Christmas season and a wonderful new year of increasing wisdom and understanding and charity and love.